In this video, I'll be going over how to take notation. Notation is important because it allows one person to write down what's going on over the board, and it's very easy for other people to follow. A couple of rules about writing down notation. First, we write which piece is moving. This is usually a capital letter, and then we write the square where it goes to. So each of these pieces has a symbol that represents it. For example, K is for king, Q is for queen, B is for bishop, and N is for knight because K is already for the king, and R is for rook. So we have capital letters for all these to represent all the pieces, except for the pawns. For the pawns, we usually assume that if we write down the square where it's going, then we don't need to write that the pawn goes there. Also, we need to know how to write which square these pieces are going to. So how do we name, for example, this square? What is this square called? Well, what we need to do is we need to see what file and what rank it's on. So this square over here, it's on the C file, and it's also on the 4th rank. So we first say the file name, so it's C, and then we say the rank name, 4. So we would call this square C4. This square over here would be on the E file and on the 5th rank. So we would call this square E5. It takes a little bit of practice to get familiar with the names of all of these squares, but soon enough you'll be able to get it as well. So without further ado, I'll be playing over the 2 games on the chess notation section. If you'd like, you can also follow along while I make the moves on the board. So, in this first game, white plays E4. Now, this first move doesn't have anything before the square name, so we assume that this will be a pawn. A pawn will make this move. E4 is right here, so then we have the pawn going to E4. Now, black plays the move C6. Once again, we need to find the square C6. This is only a square name. There's no symbol in front of this, in front of the square name, so we know that it's a pawn move. So black moves his pawn to C6. The next move, white moves D4. Once again, there's nothing in front of the square name, so it's just a pawn move. We find the square D4 and we move our pawn to it. Next, we also have D5. Black plays D5. That means once again, this is a pawn move because there's no piece name before it. So it's just D5. But this time we have NC3. So N is for knight, and that means knight goes to C3. Well, which knight goes to C3? Would it be this knight or this knight? Well, to figure that out, we need to figure out where C3 is. So we have C3, so it would be this square. It appears that only this knight can go to C3. So we move our knight to C3 here. Black plays DXE4. So what does this mean? Well, we didn't go over a piece starting with a D, and we didn't go over anything that has an X in it. Well, DXE4, X means capture. So it means something on the D file must have captured something on the E file. Since these letters are still not capitalized, then we know that this means the D pawn took something on E4. So black's D pawn takes something on E4. And that's correct. Black can take on E4. So next we have NXE4 for white. That means white's knight took something on E4. Once again, the only knight that can take anything on E4 would be this one. So knight takes E4, it would be NXE4. Here, black played the move NF6. NF6 is for black a knight to F6. We find the F6 square, it's over here, right? F6, it's this square right here. So we play this move, knight to F6. And now QD3 for white. So once again, we need to find the queen. Queen's over here. Find a D3 square, so D file, 3rd rank. D3 is right there. So we move our queen to D3. Next, E5. So once again, this one doesn't have anything before it, so E5 means it's a pawn move. Black moves his pawn to E5. So that's very simple. Black moves his pawn up 2 squares. Then we have DXE5. This time, DXE5 means that something from white's side. Some white's pawn on the D file takes on E5. D takes E5, like that. Now, black plays QA5 plus. What does a plus mean? Well, let's first play Q and A5 to figure that out. So QA5 means the queen moves to A5. A5 is over here. So after queen A5, queen A5 check, we see that it's actually check. So it turns out that the plus here means that black is giving check, and that's true. Now, it's white to move, and white plays B, D2. That means bishop to D2. d2 is this square, right here. And white moves his bishop to d2. And we can see that this is a legal move, it stops the check. Next, black plays qx e5. Q stands for queen, x is capture, so queen captures on e5. e5's over here, and black took. Queen takes e5. After queen takes e5, white can play 0-0-0. Well, that's a different move. 0-0-0. Whenever you see 0-0s, that means it's castling. So that means white castles queenside. Queenside castling goes like this. Okay, after white castles queenside, black plays the move nx e4. That means black's knight takes on e4, which is over here. And now white plays qd8 plus, which is another check. We see the plus, we know it's a check. So after qd8, that means we play our queen to the d8 square. d8 is right here, right? So we play queen to d8 check. Black plays kx d8. So k stands for king, which means his king has to capture on d8. So kx d8. Cool. And then after kx d8, we play bg5 plus, which means bishop to g5 check. The bishop is going to this square, and since this is a dark square, it means that only this dark square bishop can go there. So bishop to g5 check. Indeed, it's actually a check in two different ways. And now black plays kc7. So k to c7, king to c7 is right here. And now white plays b d8, or bishop to d8, with a number sign, which means that it would be checkmate. So let's see where d8 is. d8's over here. We move our bishop there. So our bishop was here. We're going to there. Bishop d8. Indeed, this is checkmate. Now with this one done, let's just do another one for practice. Oops. Let's do here. Okay. And I will flip the board. This one will be game number 2. White starts this game with d4. So that's white moves his pawn to d4 because there's nothing before the square name. So it's just d4, pawn to d4, and black plays the move e6. Since it's only e6, the square name, it's a pawn move. And white plays nf3. So n is for knight, the knight moves to f3. f3 is over here, which means that only this knight can go to f3. So nf3 is this knight to f3. And black plays the move f5. So once again, that's another pawn move, f5. Continuing now, we also have that white plays now the move nc3. So that's knight to c3. c3 is over here, so knight to c3 is like that. nc3, black plays nf6. So that's knight to f6. We once again find f6, so it's knight to f6. bg5, so that's bishop to g5. Well, this bishop can't really move, so it's got to be this one. Bishop to g5 is like that. And then after black plays be7, that's bishop to e7. So bishop, e7, e7's right here. So it's this bishop to e7. Then we have bx f6. So white's bishop takes on f6. Well, f6 is over here. This bishop can take on f6, so it's this one. And the white bishop takes the black knight. Black also plays bx f6, so we already know f6 is over here. The bishop that can take on f6 will be this one, so bx f6. And white plays the move e4. So once again, this starts with a lowercase letter, so it's a pawn move. White plays the move e4, advancing his pawn 2 moves. Black plays fx e4. Since this is a lowercase letter, the f is for a pawn. So pawn in the f file, black's pawn in the f file is right here, this pawn. Takes something on e4. Well, he takes the pawn on e4 then, so fx e4. Cool. And then white plays the move nx e4. Knight takes on e4. So e4 is over here. This knight can't take on e4 because knights don't move like that. So it must be this knight. Knight takes e4. Black plays the move b6. So once again, it's a lowercase move. So it's just pawn moves to b6. And then white plays the move n to e5. N is for knight. Goes to e5. Once again, this knight can go to e5. That's not legal. So n to e5 is using this knight to e5. It's always good to try both knights to see which one can go. Usually, I would say there's only one, unless there's something mistake in the notation, where then there might be 2. Going back to the game, black plays castling. So 0-0 means short castling or castling kingside. So when we castle, we move our king 2 squares. and the rook jumps over it, castling. Now white plays the move bd3, which is bishop to d3. White only has one bishop, and d3 is right here, so bishop to d3. And then black plays bb7. b7 is right here. He moves his bishop to b7. Simple. After bishop to b7, then white plays qh5, which is queen to h5. h5 is over here. Yep, the queen can move to h5 like that. And now black plays qe7. So e7, right? That's e7. The queen moves over here. Now, if I'm going a little bit too fast, you can always pause the video and try to find the squares yourself. So queen e7, white plays the move qx-h7 plus. So it's queen takes h7, and that's a check. That's how we decipher it. So it's a lot of symbols, but we can still figure out what's going on. So we have a queen take on h7. h7's over here, so that means our queen takes it, and yep, sure enough, that's a check. After qx-h7, kx-h7. So that means black takes on h7 with his king. So kx-h7 like that. And now nx-f6 plus. So once again, we decipher this saying it's n is for knight, x is for capture, and on f6. So the knight captures on f6. Check. Black plays the move king to h6, which is kh6. So h6 is over here. That means he moves his king up one square. And after kh6, white plays the move negg4. Well, is it negg4? Is it moving the knight to e4 or g4? Well, let's take a look at what this means. negg4 means knight on the e file goes to g4. We can see right now that both knights can actually move onto g4 right now. However, we use the ne to show that it's the e file. So the knight on the e file moves to g4 right now. And then after the knight on the e file moves to g4, then it's black plays the move kg5. He plays his king to g5. Now white plays h4 plus. So it's moving his pawn, since this is a lowercase move, pawn to h4, and he gives a check. Sure enough, it does. h4 check. Black plays the move kf4, which is king to f4. f4 is right here, king f4. And then white plays the move g3 plus. So the white pawn moves to g3. g3 check. Black plays kf3, so that's once again king to f3. f3 is right here, so king to f3. And now white plays be2 plus. So e2 is over here. We need to move our bishop there, and that's a check. So, yep, bishop e2 check, that's correct. And after king to g2, after k to g2, which is king to g2, g2 is over here, king g2, white plays the move rh2 plus. So, rook to h2. And obviously, once again, this rook could not have gone over there. So, rh2 plus. Black plays king g1, k to g1. Yep. And now, white plays the move kd2 number sign, which means king d2 checkmate. Well, does the king actually give checkmate? No, that's actually the rook, right? Make sure you see that the rook is the one giving checkmate. Black's king has nowhere to go. This is indeed actually checkmate. So hopefully you got some practice with these two games. You can play over them multiple times to make sure you have the notation secured down. So good luck with your notation, and you can always review the notation sheet if you have any questions.